couple of different things. We can use a really highly acidic solution known as Fry's reagent, as well as nitric acid reagent that is going to react with the metal in order to, even after the serial number has been scratched off, to still try to bring it out. So I'm going to try to do this here in my garage. And let's see, what else are we doing here? That's about it. So for step one, that's what I was going to say. Step one, what I'm going to do, I'm going to lock it here into my vise, and then I'm going to try to completely remove the entire serial number. And then I'll kind of talk about the process of what this restoration is doing and why this stuff works. Okay, so that is pretty well removed. Let me see if I can get a little more zoomed in to show. What we're going to have to do now is we're going to have to take that metal, and I'll pretty much want to try to repolish this metal. When we're putting a serial number into a piece of metal, essentially what we're doing is we're taking another piece of metal in the shape of those letters, and we are jamming it into the metal. Well, what's happening is that once that metal die is hitting here and creating that number, it's making an indentation, but that metal that was there has to go somewhere. So it's changing the surrounding density of all of the other metal. But what we need to do is we need to use our chemicals to try to kind of figure out where those density changes are happening. So I'm going to try to get this smoothed up and get this cleaned up because we want this to be about as best of a mirror finish as we can possibly get. So I'm going to switch over to trying to sand this and to getting it to be more of a mirror finish. Okay, I think that that's going to be pretty good. Another thing that I need to do whenever I'm doing this here is I need to somehow mask off this area. So you see how green this is when it's coming out? What I'm looking for is I'm looking for that color to change from a green to a real nasty kind of yellow. And that's telling me that it is corroding those top layers. That stuff stinks. And once I'm going to mix it up a little bit. And once I see that go from that green to that real yellow, I'm going to switch it out and I'm going to change it to a different solution. So often, like, a common question is, how many times do I actually have to do this? How many times do I have to rub this in? And it's never really an easy answer, because you could be doing it 3 or 4 times and you could be able to completely restore a serial number. And it could take as many as 15 times. So next up, I've got nitric acid. So I'm not going to bore all of us with the entire process of nitric acid. And you can see that what was totally shaved off is kind of being restored now. And if we were to keep going and keep doing this, if we were to keep doing more Fry's reagent on there, we could probably, actually, you know what, let me just do one more. I'll just do one more swab and see what we can bring out just to finish off the day. Pretty good, huh? So y'all can see that this really didn't take me a whole lot of time. I mean, start to finish, from just going out and grabbing the camera and getting all of this stuff started to the completion to right now is less than 45 minutes. So this process really doesn't take a very long time. And if we're going to be doing stuff like this in a lab where I know that I've got all day and I know that I've got proper equipment like a glue gun or something, we can shave some time off of that and make it sure that our serial numbers that we're restoring are going to be much more legible. And on top of that too, I know it's kind of difficult to see because I got kind of bad lighting in here. But those numbers are pretty visible here to the naked eye in front of me. But another thing that we can do is use photography and then develop that photography by using an app like Lightroom to really bring out that contrast change between those numbers and those letters that were shaved off during the filing process and the restored process from using the Fry's reagent and the nitric acid. I hope you guys learned something. I hope you enjoyed this. No, I cannot bring the guns in.
Good evening, masterminds. We are back. The real masterminds are back, and we just watched a video. And Jabs are going to explain to us what it means, because I am also really curious to know what that actually means. And Jabs, welcome again to another edition of the real masterminds. Can you please explain to everyone actually what did you just show us?
Hi, good people. Good evening. Wow. I wanted to take you back, Suspect, behind the scene where you used to work. There was a process which is called the aging process, where you go through the lab to actually identify the serial number that has been filed off. Now, that video that I showed you, it's a home-based video just for you guys to actually see how to do it. But in the lab, they have proper machines. They have cameras that are documenting these things. Suspect yesterday I said in the forensic, the important thing is to document the process that you are busy with so that it becomes authentic when you are presenting it.
I know what you are talking about. Remember, I have been working in the firearm environment for more than 15 years. And when we received firearms without serial numbers, those firearms were sent to ballistics for edging. And that is the process that you just show us. So there's no way that a firearm can go into a courtroom from ballistics without a serial number, because that's the process that should be followed to restore the serial number of that firearm.
Yes. Now, when you see on the video, the gun in question that is in the Senzo Mewa case, the serial number they have, it's 8587B. 8587B. That's what they told us. But guess what? We have not seen Rulovse, Warrant Officer Rulovse, presenting to us a photo of the numbers after the aging process.
After the aging process.
Yes, during that process. So now suspect if now, because Peter Jacoba Smart from SBV, he came to court. He also, I'm not sure whether is it him who testified also in the earlier case here, accused number 3 on the Alexander matter. Now, when he comes to court, he says, I am not able to confirm completely that this gun is ours,
Mm.
because the barrel is filed off, the serial number is not
Yes,
consistent.
Mm, mm, mm.
Now, that positions a doubt. Now, how can now the state chooses the most delicate process of doing forensic using a barrel, where else there is no cartridges that always matches the gun and the cartridge easily? Then you can say, therefore, if we found the casing here, that means that this is the gun that was in there, because most of the time they hardly don't find the projectiles. Now, we're not forensic experts, but I'm just saying that if we listen to warrant officer Rulof's evidence in court, and we listen to Yokobas Peter Smart from SPV, and you listen to warrant officer Masondo, who arrested accused number 3 in 2015. Let me tell you those scenarios, suspect. We start hearing by warrant officer Rulofse. Rulofse says he received the exhibit, he tested it, he checked the gun whether was being circulated on the previous case. He could only match the gun on the Alexandra matter only, but he could not match it on other matters. Now, that's a problem with me, because this gun suspect, SPV says they lost the gun on April, is it March 20? It's 2013 March. They say that it was lost in 2013 March in Rabarich. There was a robbery that was taking place, and their security guard were robbed and the guns were taken. Then, because they are the company that has Amare, they recorded the lost case. They even opened a Rabarich case number. So there is a Rabarich case number, I think it's 347. I don't know the number off my head now, but we will bring it through on the next session. That number, that case number, is linked to the incident of SPV losing this gun in 2013. Tell me, because Yogobas tells Righteous Court that they made sure that they circulated the gun, they completed all the report, send them through to the police so that the gun can be circulated as what? As a lost and a stolen gun. Now, as of 2015 now, we have Warrant Officer Masondo says he returned the gun. The report from forensic says this gun does not have any prior incidents. Yes, that's now on the Alexandra case. Even rule officer says no, the gun didn't have anything. Now, then SPV Smart tells us that he only got the call in November 2020 from the captain of the Hawks or something, of the police of Mlaut, he says. He says, this captain says, we need a statement from you. We may have found your gun. No, but this guy, yes. But then now this guy says, but I've testified before, we could not get the gun, we could not take back the gun because the barrel and the body of the gun is not matching. So we cannot completely say it's ours. Yes. Now, how is it possible now? Because people are trusting Mtshali so much. Yes, Captain Mtshali may understand the process, but let me tell you what. When Mangena says he went to collect the gun at where Mjali works. What was that police station? It's Cleveland.
Yes.
It's Cleveland. He says that will have been on the 20th of July 2020. Mangena says he waited there. He can't even remember who was the guy that came through. He brought the gun on a dusty box and
Wow.
it was open. That's Mangena's testimony. He said he waited very long. The gun was dusty and it was in an open exhibit. But Mjali said Mangena will have not taken the gun from him if it was open. Mjali even says he will have not given him the gun if it was not open. So I'm having difficulties because these are the other person, Mjali, is a custodian of the SAP 13.
13, yes.
And then Mangena is a owner of the process for forensic examining this gun. Now, if the two statements are not matching, real mastermind, that's where the problem is.
That's where
There's
the
a huge
problem is. I
Now-
also know the process of the procedure. You know what they are? They are such strict, extremely strict rules regarding firearms. Any firearm. More especially firearms in the custody of the South African Police Service. It's the first time in my life that I hear someone come from forensics. A forensic analyst or forensic what is he's working at forensics. It's the first time in my life that I hear he comes from forensic, go to a station to collect an exhibit. Because there's a process. When an exhibit is required even for an investigation, there's a process to be followed. Forms must be filled in. And the custodian of that province, meaning the provincial commissioner of that province, must give permission. There must be forms filled in. There must be state affidavits and statements. It's an entire process on its own. There's no way someone is going to remove a firearm from the SAP-13 and just give it to someone without any forms that has been filled in, and because this person need a gun for testing.
Yes.
That's not the process. Mangena and whoever is involved here should be charged. They should be charged because they contravened the Firearm Control Act. That's what they did. They contravened the Mangena. Another thing, when you travel with a firearm, you must have a permit. A police officer must have a permit when he travels with a firearm. So that firearm, before he can even take that firearm, there must be an application on the system. And that permit must be printed from the system to say, person number 1, 2, 3, 4, Captain or Warrant Officer or Colonel Mangena, name and everything, the serial number of the fire, all the information of the firearm is going to travel with this firearm from this date to this date. And it's only those days are going to be applicable for that permit. When that permit expires, that firearm is not supposed to be in your possession anymore. Credibility. We spoke about credibility of the witnesses. We spoke about credibility of the exhibits. We are even speaking now about credibility of the court. Because the judge having 50-year experience in the profession is not questioning this.
Hold it there. Let me play something for you. Hold it there. Let me play something for you. Let me try and see if I can get this thing for you.
Kolonel, hy is onder eed nog. Thank you.
In my screen.
Thank you.
So God, please, my Lord, we are on page 29 of Exhibit 01. The witness is also going to cross-refer to page 41 later in his evidence. Colonel, you may proceed.
Thank you, my Lord. First, I want to just obviously go back to yesterday's two calls, the one on the 2nd of August and the one on the 15th of October 2014.
Okokuqala ke ngizothanda ukuthi ke siphindele emuva kule ngcingo ezinkluza izolo. Kukhona ke le shothi i-call yange-2 zika August 2014 kanti nalena ke yange-15 zika October 2014.
Then I want to point out that suspect number 5 is Mutuli Nkani.
Now, the reason why I wanted you to actually listen to that, it's because now the stain is telling Stain is now telling us about the phone calls. Now, what we also know that Stain also told us that the last time the phone of Kelly, the runaway phone, was spotted at Molelegi Towers and the time. Now, I'm going to play this video, Suspect. It's Sergeant Mosia. Now, he's going through his sequence where he went to. Guess what? Mosia will appear to be around Moleleki around the same time the phone was last seen. Let's play.
Ngiyengasuka khona laphana ekhaya ngaya eReiger Park kuleyo case ye-LCRC 1264 ngase ngiyake ngiphindele Katlehong.
That was before the incident you were talking about, am I correct?
It is indeed so, my lord.
Okay.
Let's
read the second one. Just if you can just read the time, because the date is still the same, 26 October. What's the time there recorded?
But the date is 26 October 2014.
23:30. Departure from home to Don Park, LCRC 1263 of 10/2014, and to Phosphorus LCRC 1237 of 10/2014. Proceeded to Phosphorus LCRC without reference of 10/2014. Then to Mleleki extension 1 Katlehong for standby.
Okay. That you traveled at 23:30.
That is correct, yes. Local okuvelela khona laphana nge-26 October ngesikhathi 11:30 ebusuku ngasuka khona laphana ekhaya ngaya eDon Park LCRC 1263 eka October 2014 ngase ke ngaya futhi nakhona khona laphana eFosloras LCRC 1237/10/2014 ngaqhubeka ke ngaya eFosloras ku-LCRC leyo ke.
And then the next entry is by 7 o'clock on the 27th of October.
Now,
let's just refresh our minds. Musia is the first forensic analyst who were right on the scene in 2014, not in 2020. In 2014, he took the cell phone that night.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, it's a lot.
It's the guy that took over the cell phones and hand them over to Colonel Netling and then hand over to Mushwan. Now, we want the real masterminds to understand these things that now the defense, they're doing their best, but they just lack the resources, like what you're saying now.
They really lack the resources.
To put a vision to Musia and them and saying, or to put a vision to Stain to say, Stain, we know that Musia is the guy that arrived there first. In his logbook, he says he was around Moleleki around 11 o'clock. It's the same time where Musia, you say the stolen phone was around Muleleki, around
Muleleki.
11 o'clock. You understand?
So,
And then,
like Advocate therefore said that the only intruders in the house is the persons who removed exhibits like Musia. Musia removed the exhibit as procedurally, that was procedure. He removed the exhibit and he left with the exhibit. And now they
Yes.
come and say, is the stolen phone, the phone was stolen, the runaway phone.
Yes, because it's heard, once you start to understand the logic around that, now it's when on the next level we're going to tell you about how AVL works. It's when we're going to explain to you about also the myth about the SIM swap. While we're talking about Musia, there's also another person that also arrives as pet. It's the police. It's the old warrant officer, Matebula. Warrant officer Matebula, he says he received a note and then they got to the crime scene around 2100. So it was just after 9 o'clock. When they got there, that's when they were told that no, these people are not in the house. They went to the hospital. I want you to pay attention to the name Matebula. Now we get to be told that Kelly did the SIM swap. Now what Steyn, that is why I'm saying that Steyn started doing the work correctly. And then along the way, he started cooking. Maybe he was told to cook. That is why some people will tell me saying, they will make funny things about me, says, I say, I know Steyn. Yes, I know Steyn. Steyn is a praying man. I know him. But these lies that has happened now in court, they are far away from the police officer that I knew.
That you know.
Yes. Now, let me tell you what Steyn says. He says during the SIM swap, he then did something further, of which Steyn that has stopped rhino poaching in South Africa. That's the Steyn. Steyn has been tracking people. He's the master in tracking people. You must understand that he's not a fly by night. That's why for me, I go hard on him when I see him is lying. This is what he tells us. He says the SIM swap, he was able now to check what the SIM swap number, which phone is used on. He says the phone that the SIM swap was put in was a Nokia 2100. He took the IMEI number of that phone and then he ran it check with the database. Guess what he came back with? He came back with the number. And the number that used to be installed in that phone was registered, was recorded under a person, under a surname, Matebula. Yes. Now, then we're being told that now Matebula is a soccer player, and then now maybe Kelly may have been.
What a coincidence that there was
Yes.
a police officer Matebula at the scene. There was a runaway phone and there was a SIM swap with a phone under the name of Matebula. What a coincidence.
Let me tell you how that becomes something, because that information from Steyn, it took the matter further. The phones is pet. David Matebula, whom now is being branded, is not being called as one of the witnesses.
Well, is the witness?
I don't think that they've taken any statement from him. David Matebula at the time was at his prime playing for this team.
Not with the Nokia.
No, there's no way that he would have been carrying a Nokia.
Listen, I have my own opinion about Steyn. I think Steyn didn't lie. Steyn gave us everything that we need. He gave us that is the information that Steyn gave us.
Yes.
As we said, it's on the defense. It's on the defense to get resources, Our defense really need people who can do this kind of research for them. Because if not for these sessions, no one would have known exactly what is happening in that court. Now I'm telling you, if Steyn lied, we wouldn't have this information. Steyn didn't lie. He gave us the evidence.
No, he mixed the things. You see, that's why I'm saying.
Yeah,
that
what
he
he
takes
do is
cooking.
mixing and if you have a lawyer, attorney who is sharp in court, hence jobs, those people are sitting what they are. Remember, these attorneys are fighting against the entire system.
Yes.
They are not just fighting against the law, they are fighting against the entire system. And as I say now, they need us to do this for them so that next time when they come back, when they go back to court, then at least they have this information. They can now challenge this information.
No, they're gonna have a problem with that, suspect, because they've allowed this information
is
is
the
not
other
new.
thing. And this is because of lack of resources. That is because they don't have really time to go through all these papers, all these witnesses, 199.
No, suspect, sorry to interject there. This information for 2 years, since 2023, Steyn only testified from July 28 or 27, 2023, up until the 31st of July. I think he finished on August. I've been telling them, we've been trying to tell the things. This is what the feedback I had. The only person that was able to take my information was Mngome Zulu. Mngome Zulu, I had a lot of interaction with him. I actually guided him in certain things, basically, even with the story of the AVL that we're going to be talking about later on. We've actually shared because he was a private attorney. You see the problem with the other 4 attorneys, they are being paid by the state. So my lawyer technically signs their timesheet.
So does it mean being paid by the state, they must toe the line? Because if they don't toe the line, the state is going to do what they did to Mngome Zulu, they will withdraw their funding.
Yes.
We are left with less than 2 minutes. That's what I'm asking, because we also must come back and discuss this thing of legal aid. Legal aid cannot prescribe who are they going to pay and who are they not going to pay. Legal aid cannot, because in the Constitution, it stands there, and even when they read your rights to you, they say you have a right to an attorney. And if you cannot afford it, the state will be able to give you an attorney of your choice.
Yes, suspect. Let's just close that. We'll put that on another day.
No, that is just what I wanted to highlight, Njabula. But as we said, why in this day and age, why is there no recordings like in the court of Judge Erasmus? Why is there no recordings? Why is there no filming? Why did these people, these investigators, the best in the world, they call themselves the best in the world, why did they not record Ntanzi's confession, video, like in Erasmus?
Let me tell you, there was recording. We were denied to listen to the recording. You see, there is, whether Cronje did that recording rightly or wrongly so, the reason why I'm thinking, you see that recording, the reason why the defense won that argument, because
cut off now.
No, we still have 1 minute, 2 minutes.
It cuts at 1. It cuts at 1.
All right. Okay. No, it's fine. So what then we do is we will continue on the next episode. We're gonna be recording it shortly after this one. It's that episode will continue on the issue of SIM swap as well as the Mathebula issue. The guys must really watch the next one because it's gonna be late.
Yeah. So masterminds, we are going to close it here. Please join for the next video because we are going to proceed on this. I'm getting a lot of information in the comments. Let it come, let it come. Monday is Monday. We can't wait for Monday. Monday is Monday. Let that information flow in. See you all later. Thank you, Jabs. Let me meet again later.